Teamwork isn't just nice to have in business, it's the undisputed competitive advantage. When your team members work as a unified force, your whole operation benefits through higher productivity, thriving creativity, and unstoppable momentum. Welcome to the Impactful Teamwork Podcast, where we share with you strategies and tactics to help you develop game-changing teams so that you and your business can make a real difference in the world.
Welcome everyone to another edition of Impactful Teamwork. And this week I'm delighted to be joined by Jean Walters. And Jean is a personal growth consultant, a 7 times Amazon best-selling author. And she has a lot of wisdom to share with us on personal transformation and empowerment. And we might even get into universal laws and a bit of metaphysics as well. So Jean, welcome to the show. We're really happy to have you here.
Thank you, Julia. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. So why don't you just start by just giving everyone a little bit of background on what you do? Because I think you've got a really unique stance on how you work with organizations. And I looked on your website and you've got a raft of very impressive organizations you've worked with, and you're approaching it from a bit more of, let's use the word spiritual side of business and the energetics, which I really love. Because I think we need to unpack maybe for the listeners a bit more about business energetics and how that works.
The point is you can't get away from the universal laws or metaphysics. It's there in everything. So you can either know about it and use it well, or you can not know about it. And then you are constantly being like, oh my God, what happened today? So I like the idea of just having a knowledge about these things that we're living with so that we can really be successful with them. And part of that is learning how to empower people, because we can't have employees and then beat them down and then expect them to do great work for us. So part of what we have to do is use the energy that's in the business and help empower our employees so that they can be the best they can be, and they'll do the best work they can do for us. So there's so many ways that in the metaphysics / spirituality is everywhere, and we can pay attention to it or ignore it. And we certainly come out ahead if we pay attention.
And I think it's so interesting because when I was in the corporate world, nearly 15 years ago now, time flies, we would never talk about energy. And that was really seen as, it was like, what are you talking about? And it was all hippies and stuff like that. And I've certainly noticed in the last decade or so, there's much more of an appreciation that energy drives everything. And the whole world is energy. So we need to understand how to work with energy. So perhaps you can talk a little bit for us and share with us a little bit about how do your clients work with this energy? How did they start understanding the universal laws, which this is a huge subject.
Yeah, that is.
What are some of the bits we can distill that leaders can take and they can kind of use to action almost immediately by having an understanding of it? Yeah.
You said it first, that everything is energy, and there's energy in a book, there's energy in a room, there's energy in your body. It's up to us to make sure that we understand that, because if we walk around being angry all the time, then that is going to show up in our body as toxic energy. And there was a story I read recently about a woman who got a liver transplant, and she went back to the doctor and just check up. And she met this woman. The doctor said, you're going to need another liver in about a year. So she thought, and she also met a woman in the waiting room that was just so negative and put down everything and complained constantly and so forth. And the second woman said, I'm getting my 4th liver transplant. Yeah. And so the first woman, we'll call her Joyce, the first woman thought, oh my gosh. She took note of the fact that this woman is so negative. So she realized she was negative. So she decided to change. And she was going to come back in a year, and she had decided to change herself. She's not going to be positive. She's going to be encouraging and so forth. She did that. She came back in a year, and the doctor said, you don't need another liver.
Awesome.
So isn't that awesome? So the idea here is that what we think we might not be having an effect on our body when we're negative or hateful or vengeful or whatever it is, judgmental. And yet we really are, because the liver is the organ of, if you are an angry person, it's the organ in your body that's going to be affected.
Yeah.
So this gets down and dirty because we are made responsible. So that was just a simple story that I read not too long ago, and I thought it was very profound. So illustrated so well the importance of how we're living our life and the attitude that we have about life. Because I think you had said at some point that there's a good side and a bad side to everything, and we could focus on either one. And we can complain or we can be grateful. And the more grateful we are in life, the higher our energy is, the higher we vibrate, the more joy there is. And so those are simple things that we could just take note of and just pay attention and do your best.
So what do we say to the people that are, and there will be people listening that are really skeptical, and what's all this energy nonsense about? This is all boo-hoo, moo-hoo. I don't understand it. And I think because it's invisible, it is difficult for people to get their head round.
Yeah.
So how can we help people, the skeptics? We don't need to convert them, but how do we have a rational discourse for them that we can help them understand why this is something that would be valuable to pay attention to?
I do a little exercise in my classes, and the exercise is I have people close their eyes, and then I have them take the word anger and feel it. And then I ask them to feel the color, the texture, the sound, the smell, every sense used around anger. And then I ask them to move over, shift their mind, and move into peace. And I ask them to do the very same thing: texture, smell, taste, touch, and then what it does. And then I will ask them to look at their body and what do they feel when they feel peace? What does your body feel when you feel anger? I do that with a few opposites: chaos versus order, hate versus love, illness versus health. And after we do a few of those opposites, then I ask them, tell me what you felt. And to a person, I feel tight and restrictive with anger and illness and hate. And I feel open and just like I can breathe when I do the positives. So in a minute, I always say I can prove to you what energy is. I just do that little exercise, and then everyone can see it in their own mind and in their own way. So energy is, I don't know, maybe in the United States we're a little bit more ready for that. But I don't think they have too much trouble in getting that point across. But that's a little simple way that people can get it. I think they have to have their own experience. I don't think you can tell them. You can talk about it. They have to experience themselves. So I do a lot of experiential work with people so that they can experience it. And then they see the radical shifts. So that's very helpful.
Yeah, when I bring people out to work with my horses, energy is actually a key component of that, because the horses only respond to congruent energy.
That's right.
It's really aligned. And I think one of the real challenges that a lot of leaders have got in the world that we live in today is that we do live in a very chaotic society, right? And there's so much what I call dysfunctional energy out. This crisis and this crisis. And I think that's
the news.
Absolutely. And I think that's the challenge for leaders in how do we stay present and grounded in what you might call solid energy, to be that beacon of light for our team to gravitate towards, that isn't crazy, because I've seen that so many times, right? Everything hits the fan and leaders run into this blind panic firefighting, and everyone's confused. Nobody knows what's going on, and everything just starts to deteriorate. And I think it's a real challenge for leaders now to become that real anchor in the storm that's going on around, to help keep our team grounded.
When I work with a business leader, the first thing I ask them is, tell me your mission statement. And then after they do that, I tell, where is it noted and how do you get it across to your employees and how do you live that mission statement? Here's the reaction they do. I have this mission statement, it's on the wall, and that's it. And the thing is with employees, it's the same thing. It's like, why are you here? What is your mission? And
Mm.
how can you make that a positive reality in your life? Because if we're here cleaning up the air or something, we need a mission statement to realize that we can have an effect on that. But the other thing about that would be like you come as an employee and you have a talent. And I'm hiring you because you have a talent. And I want to remember that this is why we're together, because you're offering something very important to this business. And I'm going to remind you of that. I'm going to say, oh, Julia, you are so good on the air. You're so good with people. I'm going to use you in this situation because you have such a talent in that regard. How do you feel? Woo. And yet, how many people really do that in business? It's so smart. You'll get the best out of your employee and also the whole mood. And maybe we've called it a mood rather than an energy. The whole mood of the company is bigger and brighter because of that. And it's not that hard. All you have to do is pay attention. I walk in someone's office and I'll notice one fella had sports stuff all over his office. He had baseball players and all this stuff. So I could relate to him from sports. I'm not asking him to talk to me about music. I move it in my contact with him through sports. But when you do that, people will tell you what it is they love and resonate to, and then you can use that to motivate them, or you can use that as a metaphor to help them understand better what their work is with you. It's not that hard, but we have to think. We have to get out of our own self so we can relate to what the other person's all about.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm pretty good at.
Yeah. And there's excuse me. There's so many great gems in there because you talk about something that we talk about a lot, which is attention being a superpower. And I think it's one that's really missing for leaders right now because leaders are so busy. We've forgotten that we actually need to slow down and pay attention. And only when we really pay attention can we be present enough to notice that the things on the wall, that this person's more a sports person than in music. And I think that's so important because we need to meet our team where they are. And inspire and motivate them with the language and the opportunities they understand. But also, everything you've said also ties back to something that we call grab the reins, which is one of the accelerators of our unbridled teamship roadmap, which is all about how do we set that purpose? Because everybody on the team needs to know where we're going. And like you said, so many leaders, oh yes, I've got a purpose, but they haven't shared it with anyone. Or at least they think they've shared it, but they've said it once and they assume that everyone's on board, right? They stuck it on the wall. Oh, everyone must know it. And we know that people need to be told multiple times and they need to experience it and hear it in lots of different ways or find out about it in different ways.
You can ask somebody the mission statement and they won't even remember it. But it's on the wall.
I know. I can't tell you the number of companies I go into and we do the same with values. What are the values? And they look at you like a deer in the headlights. And it's it's all plastered over the walls. So I think it's about how do we as leaders get our team members to embody want the business to be, and then to recognize what their level of contribution is towards that. So like you said, the person that
value your employees because they do have special talents. And maybe you don't have those talents, but that's why you need them. And you need them at their best. So it's not that hard, but you have to think a little bit outside yourself to see that. Yeah.
I think for a leader, you have to get your ego out of the way. And I know when I was leading a team and growing a business in the corporate space, I remember quite clearly, and I've shared it previously on the podcast, that I wouldn't hire anyone better than me. Because that was my ego, right? Getting oh my God, they'll be better than me. But actually,
definitely hire them better.
Absolutely. That's what you do when you're naive and you're coming up the leadership ranks, right? But it's so important that we hire people that have got different skills that can contribute in a different way because teamwork is what makes the dream work. And we need to get all the right people in the business pulling in the same direction. For everything to work. And the heart of what we're talking about here by doing that is we're orchestrating the energy, the mood of the business to go in the direction we want.
Exactly. And it would be awful if I'm not a computer person, I'm not a techie person. So I would definitely want someone right by my side that knows all about it. And if you're not a techie person and you don't hire that person, you're in so much trouble these days because everything's done that way. So I can see that whatever it is you need, hire the best. It's you're still the owner of the company or
Yeah.
the president of the company or whatever. You still get to orchestrate, like you said. You're still the leader, but you need those people, and gosh, you want to thank them and be grateful to them and tell them how much you appreciate them. Because what happens to your energy when someone tells you you're appreciated?
Goes
It
up.
goes
Right?
right up. It goes right up. Then you go and you're so happy to do your job. If somebody just complains with you and just tells you, oh, you made that mistake, clean it up, whatever, energy goes down. And then they're not as excited about being at work and they're looking around for something else where they can feel more appreciated. So it's not even a hard concept. It's simple. You do it with your children. The same thing you do with your children. If you're always telling them what's wrong with them, their self-esteem is going to just
Mhm.
plummet. But if you say, oh my gosh, you're so good at that, you can see all the little sparkles coming out of them. Because we all need that. We all need to be built up, and we need to be taught how to build ourselves up too. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is because I think we live in a world, don't we, nowadays, where everyone's batting you down.
Yeah.
There isn't enough building each other up.
Yes. I feel like that's something I'm good at, and people will like to talk to me because I'm never going to tell them what a loser they are or something like that. I'm always going to say, let's find out what you can do about this given your talents. And they're like, no one talks that way. So we're
Mhm.
just I'm hoping to just make that change in the world where we can begin to see each other as valuable beings because we are. Every one
Yeah.
of us is something.
Yeah. And I love that because really at the core of this is about how do each of us have a much more positive outlook towards everything than then if we all collectively have a positive outlook, it actually lifts everyone up, right? And,
Yeah.
and and we know that good old Jim Rohn quote, our success is based on the top 5 people we hang out with the most. So
Oh,
hang out with the people that are the doomsayers, oh,
yeah.
life's so bad. And then you spiral into that negative and
Yeah.
people's health go down and get into depression
Yeah.
and stuff like that. You've
And
alluded
that's
to
what they
it.
want to have a drink.
Yeah.
I think I need a drink.
Yeah. And then,
Yeah.
versus that, you surround yourself with a group of really inspiring, motivating people,
Yeah.
and it
Yeah.
lifts you up. And you're like, yeah, I want some of that. And
Yeah.
it's
Absolutely.
so addictive, actually.
Yeah.
So
But
just,
it's easy if you just think about it. If you're just a
mm,
little conscious, it's easy. And I always even think about the news. I think if we're going to have the news on all the stuff that's going on,
yeah,
can we find ways to make it positive too? The reason we want to have the shipping lane open is for these reasons, and this is why it's important. Then tell them the rest of it, because then people get a visual picture and they're more ready to engage.
yeah,
Instead of complain, "Oh, this is what we're doing now, and that, oh, it's horrible," whatever. I avoid all that because I don't wanna contaminate my own
mhm,
energy,
yeah,
with the negatives. And there's other ways to put it. That's all I'm saying. There's other ways to put it.
yeah,
So that we're all part of the problem solving, you know?
yeah. And I increasingly never listen to the news now because it's too negative.
Yeah.
And it's not for me to be, it's not me sticking my head in the sand. I'm just like, I'm just
No.
collected. I know enough about what's going on that I know
Yeah.
I've got some context around it, but I don't need
Sure.
to be listening to it all day, every day on News 24 channels and everything else. It just repeats
Yeah.
itself.
And there
Yeah.
are people who do that. And
Good. Yeah.
when you hear about them being sick, to me, it's not a big shock because they've been contaminating themselves all day long with
Mhm.
that. So I don't know what they expect if they're going to come out of this feeling really good because it's not going to happen.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, in your work with companies as an empowerment coach as well, we've talked a lot about some of the things you can do to empower your team. I'm just wondering if there's any other strategies that you've seen people employ that have worked really well to get the team more engaged and pulling in that same direction.
Let me think about it. One of the things I do help ask the boss to do is look at their employees and see what are their interests, and encourage them through their interests. Like I was saying, the baseball player, maybe the way you coach them is by using a baseball metaphor, but acknowledge them as unique beings and then use that information to help them be their best. I teach a class called Overcoming Rejection.
Okay.
And of course, it's really good for salespeople
Sure.
because they believe they're rejected. But the idea is you have to make your product attractive. So if I'm going to look at you and see how this product can enable you in some way, rather than just the speech, the
Mhm.
canned speech that's there, and it doesn't fit everybody. So if we can learn to adapt and say what is good about my product that relates to your life, that's going to increase your success. So those are the kinds of things. And even if someone says, I don't want your product, I don't want your service, then find out why. What is it about? What are you saying? What are you presenting that is a turnoff? Because not that everybody has to like your service. Everybody doesn't.
No.
But you want to appreciate that about people. It's a unique thing. And so many people will like it and others won't. And then if you understand that, you don't have to take it personally. The reason people feel rejected is because they take everything personally. And
Yep.
it's so necessary. It's so unnecessary. So some simple things like that to be real about it. Everybody isn't going to want an IT person or a tech person
Yeah.
on the staff. Everybody isn't going to want that. And there are people where it's going to be really relevant and others that it is not. So not everybody's going to want to read my books.
Yeah.
There are going to be some people that love it and some people that
Yeah.
like, what? What?
Yeah.
Should
Yeah.
I
And
take that personally or do I just understand I have a certain audience that I'm teaching and helping? And that's good. That's wonderful. And I'm very grateful for that.
yeah, and I think I definitely experience that when I'm talking with organizations about bringing their team out to do the horsework. It is a
Mhm.
bit Marmite, right? Some people
Yeah.
totally are in for, and there's a lot of people that are quite skeptical about it in the first instance. And then interesting when they come and try it, they're like, oh, I
Yeah.
totally get it. But it can take time for people to join the dots. And for some people, it's never going to resonate. And that's
Right.
absolutely
Right.
fine too. But it did. It took me a long time to realize it wasn't personal. And they're not
Yeah.
like, they don't like my horse. I was like, no, it was never about that, actually, like
Yeah.
you say. But I think you make such a great point there about, if we're going back to thinking about that, the leader and the baseball metaphor versus the music, it's about leaders really spending time getting to know their team members. It's where we need to pay the attention to invest that time and energy to build those relationships,
Yes.
because that's what underpins everything. And once we know what motivates and drives those team members, then we can create situations that make them more empowered, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the boss's job. No, they're just a boss. They're there to look at the big picture. They have to be the big picture person and see where all the pieces fit together and encourage teams that work together. I've heard so many stories of just negative people that just ruin the job. And one person I remember, I had her actually do forgiveness work with her boss
Yeah.
because the boss was pretty crappy and she was taking it personally. But then I helped her to see that the boss was in pain in some way or other. And that's why there was negativity there. So she kept forgiving and forgiving just to herself within her
Yeah.
own world. She kept forgiving. And then what happened was the boss came around and started talking to her and was like more friendly. And so it kind of changed the whole dynamic. And it actually worked out to where she was much more motivated and she felt at home. And the boss became a nicer person. But it was because of the energy of forgiveness instead of, oh, here's the boss again. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And it's how simple is that? But we have to look with different eyes. I always tell people, look with different eyes because you're only seeing the boss is crabby, but you're not understanding anything about the boss. And the boss is definitely not understanding about you, but you have to start the process. If you're the one that sees it, then you're the one that has to start the process.
Yeah. I think it is. We were talking off air before we came in. It is this way that people do instinctively know and have this intuition about situations. It's just
Mhm.
sometimes we can't articulate it. The gut
Yeah.
feel that, oh,
Yeah.
I don't know, my boss doesn't really like me. And then we take that personally. Oh,
Yeah.
my boss
Yeah.
is rejecting me. I'm such a
Yeah.
rubbish employee, and a whole story we make up about it.
Yeah.
Not really realizing that maybe in this particular instance, we don't know what's going on in their personal life, and it's
No.
time to
No.
get to know them. Maybe they're going through a divorce. Maybe there's all kinds of stuff. Maybe they've got a health crisis.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's how it's being shown and revealed in the workplace. And so then it gets back to our law of polarity we were talking about earlier on, that there is for everything good, there's the opposite, which is the bad.
Mhm.
They both exist on the same coin. As you were sharing that story, I was thinking, well, at one point, the lady could only see the negative side
Yeah.
of the story.
Yeah.
And then
Because her feelings were hurt. But the other part of that is, what's your responsibility in that? As the employee, as the boss, what's your responsibility? If you've got a relationship with somebody there at work and it's negative, how are you playing into that? Because once we take responsibility for our own actions, people are like, oh no, but oh yes. When they take responsibility for their own, maybe they're a little snippy. Maybe they woke up in a bad mood. And so be responsible for that part. And then that'll help change it too. But we're bringing our whole self to work.
Yeah.
So if something's going on at home, it's not so good. But we can also stop ourselves before we get there and go, okay, how can I put myself in the right space so I can really be here and do a good job,
Yeah.
Yeah. These are not difficult things, but they do require some thought.
Yeah, I think it's, would we say that they're simple, but they're not easy, right? Because like we're saying, none of this is really rocket science, but yet
No.
we don't do it and we know it. And it's this like, how do we slow down enough to pay attention to what's really
Yeah.
going on,
Yeah.
be really consciously aware of how we are presenting ourselves in the workplace,
Yeah.
whether as a team member or as the leader. And then what's the impact that has on everyone else? Because, we often talk in the podcast about this ripple impact. We all of us create a ripple impact around us. And are we creating a positive or a negative one? And I do think as a leader that we have an obligation really to try and make sure that our team members leave the office with a positive ripple effect. Because now we go home and now we're polite to our spouse, husband, partner, whatever. And then that has a knock-on effect on the kids and everything else. So we go home and we're like, that was a really rubbish day. And then we create
kids all go hide in the other room.
And then we just create this negative ripple around us. And I think so many of us have we've never really taught this, are we? We're not really taught about how we impact everyone else. And I guess I've learned it because the horses have such good, what we call sensory acuity, 20 feet. They know exactly what's going on. They know what's happening with me before they even see me, which is really scary. They know me better than I do sometimes.
They operate from that level all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not thinking something, they're feeling everything. So you cannot lie to a horse. But it's a great exercise, isn't it? I mean, maybe everybody needs to have some of that encounters.
Yeah.
To see how easily it is picked up.
Yeah.
And we are the same way. We just don't realize how sensitive we are.
Yeah, we don't. Yeah, we haven't. A lot of us don't have the language to realize what we're experiencing. I think that's the thing, isn't it? As the horse is just very, I don't like your energy. I remember there was a whole summer I couldn't catch my horse because my energy was so off. I was just like, I want to ride now. It's all about me. No relationship. And my horse was like, later.
I'm having it.
No, exactly. And then I discovered months afterwards, my team was also thought I was scary and intimidating at the same time. Interesting. But they were too polite to tell me that.
Yeah.
I know what it was. I was just super focused on the work, what needed to get done. But that was the impact I was having on my team members around me. My horse was just telling me because I couldn't connect with him. So it is really
beautiful that you had that way to check yourself. The horse wasn't going to put up with it.
No, but unfortunately, unfortunately, Jean, at the time, I didn't know about any of this. So I was just getting frustrated. And it was only years later when I started to understand about equine facilitated leadership and understand more about the psychology of horses and how they operated. I was like, oh my God, that's what was going on then. Like Steve Jobs says, sometimes you have to look back to join the dots, right, to figure out what happened.
Absolutely. But that's one of the things I suggest to people all the time. Ask yourself the question, what is really going on here? The gal I was telling you about, with the supervisor that was negative her, as she changed and the supervisor changed and the relationship changed, she ended up getting a better job, a much nicer job that fit her perfectly and of more money and everything. But that would not have happened if she didn't do this work and change her own self. So you can't people can't blame everybody else. They have to take responsibility for their own mood, their own efforts, the way they approach work and so forth. So that's not rocket science. That's pretty simple.
Yeah.
But sometimes you have to show it. Sometimes you have to show it
Yeah.
because it's not something I think we have a blaming society. It's your fault. You weren't mean to me. I didn't do anything. It was all and I see it even with people going through divorces. One guy is the bad guy and I'm the good guy. And there's nothing, it's definite, like bad, good. And I know people aren't like that. People have a mix. They, like you said, they were hurting or something is going on and they're just not responding well to it. But if we take responsibility and look at that, we realize why people might back away, or like you said before, they're avoiding you or they don't want to hear what you have to say because you're not saying it in a way that supports them. Yeah. So those are important things that we need to bring to the business world as well as to all of our personal worlds as well.
No,
Yeah.
absolutely. And as you're saying that, as we bring this to a close, it just reminds me of a friend I was talking to recently who unfortunately is just getting divorced. And she was with Tony Robbins. And Tony Robbins said, as much as you hate him for all the rubbish that's gone on, you've got to love him and appreciate all the great things that happened. Again, law of polarity, right? Both exist simultaneously. And we've got to, for everything that's not going so well in the world, there will be something going on that's really positive if we hard enough for it.
Yeah. And I ask people to back up a little bit and go look at the relationship. And there's a reason why you got together with this person. Yeah. What was it? And then they don't get it right away. But it's sometimes it's like, which parent did you marry? Yeah. And it's you normally marry the parent that was most difficult. So you're working out an issue with this person, even though you don't realize that's what you're doing. And if you could back up and see that more clearly, then you can look with appreciation that this is how far I've come since we've been married, even though at this point we're not liking each other too much.
Yeah.
But
it's fascinating.
It's a little bit of a game and it's a little bit of a creative expression. And I think of everything as a puzzle and which piece are you working on right now? Yeah. And if you can get that piece, then you might be ready for the next piece too. But Earth life, as I call it, is all about growth. We move into challenge. We are challenged in Earth life because we are here to grow. So when people go, why is everything complicated? It's not if you just back up and look at it with different eyes, and you'll realize this is what I came in to learn. Yeah, this is what I came in to develop. And then you can do it and you don't have to be wasting so much time and have a good time in the process.
You love the universe because when you don't learn it the first time, it just brings it back again, right? Then you have learned the lesson and you're like, damn, that again.
Yeah. So here's a double dose then, honey.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
It's
Okay.
all good though.
So, Jean, it's been such a pleasure chatting with you today on the podcast. How can people get hold of you if they want to find out more about what you're up to and they want to connect with you?
Yes. I have a website and it's www.transformation.com.
Okay.
And you can see all the various things that I do on there. And also they have a newsletter if you want to sign up. Then you'll be informed of the classes that come up and the different podcasts that are available and so forth. And then, of course, I have my books. And I wanted to offer your viewers this book with it's a book that I think is kind of universally accepted, The Journey from Anxiety to Peace. And it offers practical steps to handle fear, embrace struggle, and eliminate worry to become happy and free. How about that? I'll do all that, right? And then, but I can offer 3 chapters free so they can kind of dip their toe in the water and see if it's something that works for them, but also just give them some nice cues on how to take care of themselves, really. It really comes down to that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's so generous. So We'll put details about that in the show notes so that everyone can grab those.
And that all they have to do is just sign up for the newsletter, and then just put a note, or they don't have to sign up for the newsletter. Just email me through my website, and then mention that they want those 3 chapters. I'd be happy to send them to them.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much indeed. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been such a pleasure talking to you. And
Thank you
just
so
talking
much,
a bit about empowerment in the workplace and unpacking a little bit about business energetics and how they really work and how practical they really are and how we all really need to start to understand them.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Julia.
Thank you so much indeed. I've really enjoyed it. Okay, everyone. So until next week, really love you to pause and think about what are the business energetics going on in your
life and business. Until next week. Bye-bye.